Imagine you are working on a very important presentation. Your boss is waiting for the file, and suddenly, your computer screen starts to melt. Not literally, but the text on your screen begins to slide down into a messy pile at the bottom of the monitor, as if gravity just decided to target your pixels. Then, a message pops up asking you to play a game of slot machines to win back your files. This isn't a high-stakes cyber war or a state-sponsored attack meant to dismantle the power grid. This is the era of the prankster virus. Before the internet became a place for professional criminals and digital heists, it was a playground for bored teenagers and mischievous coders who just wanted to see if they could make someone across the world laugh, or perhaps mildly annoy them into a state of confusion. Most people think of computer viruses as terrifying tools of destruction, but there is a whole subculture of digital infections that are frankly hilarious. We are going to dive deep into the most funny, bizarre, and absolutely ridiculous computer viruses ever written, from the one that forced you to play an anime shooting game to the one that turned your printer into a paper-wasting confetti machine. If you thought getting hacked was always a nightmare, prepare to see the side of cybersecurity that feels more like a digital comedy club. Let's start with a classic from the MS-DOS era known as the ambulant or the walker virus. In the early 90s, you might be typing away when suddenly, a little 8-bit character would appear on your screen and just walk. He wasn't stealing your data. He wasn't encrypting your hard drive. He was just a tiny, blocky man wearing a hat who strolled from one side of your monitor to the other. He would walk behind your text, step over your spreadsheets, and disappear off the edge of the screen. It was essentially the world's first digital hitchhiker. The only real damage it did was a bit of a slowdown because, back then, computers had the processing power of a modern toaster, and rendering a walking man was actually quite a task for the CPU. It was a harmless, whimsical intrusion that reminded users that their machines weren't just cold calculators, but places where a bit of digital life could manifest. But if a walking man is subtle, the HPS virus was anything but. This virus targeted Windows 95 users and had a very specific, very annoying sense of humor. It only activated on Saturdays. If you turned on your computer on a Saturday, the virus would silently wait until you opened a bitmap image. Then it would secretly flip that image horizontally. Every picture you looked at was a mirror image of itself. People thought their graphics cards were failing or that they were developing a very specific type of vision problem. The creator of the virus even included a hidden message in the code that said HPS is not a virus, it's a lifestyle. Eventually, the virus would reveal itself by showing a message about the HPS, which stood for Healing Power of Sarcasm. It was a masterpiece of pettiness that did nothing but gaslight the user once a week. Moving into the realm of pure chaos, we have to talk about the Technicolor virus. This was a visual assault on the senses. When it infected a computer, it would slowly start to change the colors of the user's interface. Your blue taskbar would turn neon pink. Your white background would become a flickering lime green. It was like your computer had been dropped into a psychedelic vat of paint. Every time you moved the mouse, the colors would cycle through the rainbow. It didn't delete anything, but it made working on the computer practically impossible because your eyes would start to hurt after 5 minutes. It was the digital equivalent of someone sneaking into your house and replacing all your light bulbs with disco lights. It was annoying, yes, but you had to admire the sheer vibrance of the prank. Now let's look at the Ika Taco virus, which translates to squid octopus. This one came out of Japan and targeted people who were downloading files through peer-to-peer networks. Instead of a scary warning, the virus would replace all your icons and files with a cute, cartoonish picture of a squid. Your resume? A squid. Your vacation photos? Squids. Your system folders? All squids. It would even replace your desktop wallpaper with a massive image of the Ika Taco character. The virus was actually quite sophisticated in how it hid itself, but its payload was so absurdly cute that many victims couldn't help but laugh before they started the grueling process of trying to recover their original file names. It was a massive, squid-based takeover of the digital world. For the computer enthusiasts who love a bit of irony, there is the Noisette virus. This one didn't bother with your screen at all. Instead, it targeted your computer's internal speaker. Back in the day, computers had a PC speaker that could only make beeps and boops. The Noisette virus would wait for a random interval and then play the sound of a small nut cracking. Crack, and that was it. Just a tiny, sharp sound once every 20 minutes. People would tear their offices apart looking for a mouse or a structural crack in the wall, never suspecting that their computer was the one playing the prank. It was the ultimate long-game virus, designed to drive the user slowly insane with a sound that seemed perfectly natural, but was entirely digital. One of the most famous funny viruses is the creeper worm, which is actually recognized as the first computer worm ever created. Back in 1971, it traveled through the ARPANET, the precursor to the internet. When it landed on a machine, it would simply display the message, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." It didn't do anything else. It just wanted to be found. It was so harmless that the person who wrote the first antivirus software, called Reaper, designed it to do exactly the same thing: crawl through the network and delete the creeper. It was a game of digital tag between two programs that existed before the concept of cybercrime was even a thing. In the early 2000s, we saw the rise of malware as a service, but for pranks. The Macarena virus was a prime example. When it infected a computer, it would wait for the system clock to hit a specific time, and then it would force the computer to play a MIDI version of the song Macarena. But it didn't stop there. It would also display a message saying, "You've been infected with the Macarena virus? Now stand up and do the dance." It was a social experiment to see if the coder could actually force a human to do a specific physical action through a digital prompt. While most people just reached for the mute button, the idea of a virus that acted as a mandatory dance instructor is objectively hilarious. Then there is the Skull or Skulls virus, which was one of the first to target mobile phones, specifically the Symbian operating system. When it hit your phone, it would replace all your app icons with a little picture of a skull and crossbones. But the funny part was that it didn't actually steal your data. It just disabled all the phone's functions except for making and receiving calls. Basically, it turned your high-tech smartphone back into a dumb phone from the 90s. It was a commentary on our reliance on apps and mobile technology. The virus was essentially saying, "You don't need all these fancy icons. Just be a phone for a while." If you're interested in gamified malware, you have to talk about Renren Video, or more famously, the TH241 virus. This virus was a lock screen that would freeze your computer and tell you that the only way to get your files back was to achieve a high score in a niche Japanese bullet hell game called Toho. You had to genuinely play the game and reach a certain point for the virus to automatically decrypt your files. It was an academic virus. It didn't want your money, it wanted you to get better at video games. Can you imagine the frustration of someone who has never played a video game in their life, having to learn how to dodge thousands of neon projectiles just to get their tax returns back? It's a premise for a comedy movie, but it actually happened. Consider the LSD virus for MS-DOS. This one was truly a work of art. When executed, it would take your current screen and apply a melting effect to it. The colors would begin to flow together in swirling, kaleidoscopic patterns. It looked exactly like a movie depiction of an LSD trip. It was visually stunning for the time, showing what was possible with low-level assembly coding. After the trip was over, it would just exit and leave your prompt waiting for you. It was a hit-and-run visual experience. It was the digital equivalent of a graffiti artist tagging your monitor with a masterpiece and then disappearing into the night. A particularly cheeky virus was called Ping Pong. It appeared in 1988 and was one of the most common viruses for the IBM PC. If the virus was active and you didn't press a key for a certain amount of time, a small ball would appear on your screen and start bouncing off the edges of your windows. It was literally a game of Pong that played itself on top of your work. If you pressed a key, it would vanish. It was a boredom virus. It assumed that if you weren't typing, you wanted to be entertained. The irony was that it often activated when people were staring at their screens trying to think of what to write, only to be distracted by a bouncing white dot. Now, let's talk about the coffee virus. This wasn't really a virus in the traditional sense, but a payload of a worm. When it reached a computer, it would display a message: "I have detected that your system is running too hot. I am opening the emergency cooling vent." Then, it would eject the CD-ROM tray. In the era before everyone had built-in cup holders, it was a common joke that the CD tray was a cup holder. By opening it, the virus was offering the user a place to put their coffee. It was a helpful virus that used hardware in a way it was never intended. The cuckoo virus was another exercise in mild annoyance. It would wait until the computer was silent, and then start typing cuckoo in random places on the screen. It would also play a sound through the internal speaker that sounded like a bird chirping cuckoo. Cuckoo. It was like having a digital cuckoo clock that had lost its mind. It didn't delete files. It just wanted to be heard. It was a persistent, chirping roommate that you couldn't kick out without a specialized antivirus tool. For the finance-minded listeners, the funny viruses represent a time before the economy of cybercrime. Back then, there was no Bitcoin, no easy way to launder money, and no underground marketplace for stolen credit cards. Most hackers were doing it for clout or fun. This means the incentives were completely different. Success wasn't measured in dollars, but in how many people saw your joke. This attention economy led to much more creative and visual payloads. Today, a virus wants to be as invisible as possible so it can keep stealing your money. In the 90s, a virus wanted to be as loud as possible so everyone would know it was there. It was a more honest time for malware. Let's look at the spam virus, not the email kind, but the physical kind. There was a virus that targeted networked printers. If it infected a computer, it would wait until the middle of the night and then send a print command to every printer on the network. The command was just one line of text: "I am the printer ghost and I am hungry." It would print this one line over and over until the printer ran out of paper. The next morning, the office manager would find thousands of sheets of paper on the floor, all claiming to be from a hungry ghost. It was a waste of paper, but the image of a confused office worker standing in a sea of ghost paper is undeniably funny. Then there is the Anna Kournikova virus, which we've mentioned before in a different context, but it fits here too because of the bait. Millions of grown men clicked on an attachment thinking they were going to see a photo of a tennis player, only to have their Outlook address book used to send the same photo to their boss, their wife, and their grandmother. The funny part wasn't the code. It was the sheer predictability of human nature. It was a global gotcha moment that embarrassed millions of people simultaneously. It revealed that beneath all our high-tech systems, we are still just easily distracted mammals. The Maltese amoeba virus had a very dramatic entrance. When it activated, it would overwrite the boot sector and then display a message: "To the people of Malta, this is the Maltese amoeba. You have been infected. Do not worry. I will not hurt your files, but I will make your computer dance." Then, the screen would start to shake and vibrate as if the monitor was having a seizure. It was a theatrical virus. It used the screen refresh rates to create a flickering effect that made the entire image seem to wobble. It was harmless, but it was a great way to give someone a heart attack before they realized it was just a visual trick. Consider the suicide virus. No, it didn't do anything to the user. Instead, it was a virus that would infect a file and then immediately delete itself from the host. It was a reclusive virus. It wanted to travel, but it didn't want to stay. It was as if the coder wanted to prove they could land a virus on a system, but they didn't actually want to cause any trouble. It was a ghost that left no trace other than a slightly different file size. It's like someone breaking into your house just to leave a note saying, "I was here," and then fixing the lock on their way out. A more modern, funny one is open source ransomware. It was a joke project where the ransomware would lock your files and ask you to donate to a specific charity to get them back. If you showed proof of a $5 donation to the Red Cross or a local animal shelter, the creator would manually send you the key. It was vigilante malware. It was trying to use the tools of the bad guys to do something good. While still technically illegal, the idea of a virus that forces you to be a better person is a hilarious twist on the genre. The burger virus was a classic for the Commodore 64. When it activated, it would display a picture of a hamburger and say, "I'm hungry, feed me a disk." If you didn't insert a new floppy disk, the computer would just sit there. If you did insert a disk, the virus would proceed to eat it by formatting it. It was a very literal interpretation of consuming data. It turned the act of data corruption into a snack time for the computer. Let's talk about Marburg. This was a virus from the late 90s that was visually terrifying but ultimately just a prank. It would wait until you weren't looking and then fill your desktop with small, critical error icons, the red circle with an X. It would put hundreds of them all over your wallpaper. When you saw it, you'd think the whole system had crashed. But when you tried to click one, it would just vanish or play a funny sound like a boing. It was the digital version of a whoopee cushion. It set up a massive expectation of disaster and then delivered a tiny, harmless punchline. In 2026 and beyond, we might see a resurgence of these artistic or funny viruses as the tools for creating them become integrated with AI. Imagine a virus that doesn't steal your money but uses AI to rewrite your emails in the style of a 17th century pirate. "I be sending you the Q3 reports, matey. Arr!" Or a virus that uses deepfake tech to change your face in Zoom calls to look like a cat. These deepfake pranks could be the next wave of humorous malware. As the world becomes more serious and security becomes more intense, the jester hacker will always find a way to poke a hole in the balloon of corporate dignity. The Welchia or Nashi worm was a helpful virus. It was written to counter the blaster worm. Welchia would infect a computer, check if Blaster was there, delete it, and then download and install the official security patch from Microsoft. After it fixed the computer, it would delete itself. It was the digital Batman. It was a virus that worked for the good of the world. The only problem was that it was so aggressive in its fixing that it crashed many corporate networks by using up all the bandwidth. It was like a doctor who is so eager to help you that he accidentally knocks you over and breaks your arm while trying to give you a flu shot. The stoned virus was one of the most widespread ever. It simply displayed a message at boot time. Your PC is now stoned. Legalize marijuana. It was written by a student in New Zealand in 1988. At the time, it was a scandalous political statement. Today, it's a nostalgic relic of a time when hacking was just a way to express an opinion or a rebellious vibe. It didn't damage anything, it just wanted to start a conversation with every person who turned on an infected PC. Consider the Wall-E virus. This one was incredibly lazy. If it infected your computer on a specific day, it would wait for you to type the word whale. As soon as you hit the final E, it would display a large, poorly drawn ASCII art of a whale and then crash the application. It was a keyword-triggered prank. It was a tiny trap waiting in the shadows of your keyboard for a very specific moment. If you never typed whale, you'd never know you were infected. It makes you wonder how many other keyword viruses are sitting on old hard drives right now, waiting for someone to type aardvark or platypus. The psychological impact of these funny viruses was actually quite positive for the tech community. They made the unknown world of computers feel more human. They turned the machine from a scary, mysterious box into something that could tell a joke. They reminded us that behind the code, there are people with a sense of humor, even if that humor is a bit twisted. In an age of zero trust and constant cyber threats, we almost miss the days when a virus just wanted to show you a picture of a squid or make you do the Macarena. For the computer knowledge enthusiasts, these viruses are a masterclass in assembly language and system-level interrupts. To make a tiny man walk across a DOS screen while other programs were running required a deep understanding of how the CPU handled multitasking and video memory. These pranksters were often the most talented coders in the world. They weren't using high-level languages like Python. They were talking directly to the silicon. They were the street artists of the digital world, using the constraints of the system to create something unexpected. The Phantom virus had a very eerie sense of timing. It would wait until the computer had been idle for exactly 1 hour, and then it would start to fade the screen to black, very slowly, over the course of 10 minutes. If the user moved the mouse, it would snap back to full brightness. It was a digital ghost. It gave the impression that the computer was tiring out or that it was haunted by a spirit that only appeared in the dark. It was a subtle, atmospheric prank that relied on the user's own imagination to create the fear. As we look back, the funny viruses were the golden age of malware. It was a time of creativity and mischief before the dark clouds of international cybercrime took over. They were the graffiti of the internet age. And while we definitely need modern security to protect our banks and our privacy, a small part of every old-school IT professional misses the ambulant man strolling across the screen. He wasn't there to take your Bitcoin. He was just there to say hello and remind you that even in the world of logic and math, there is always room for a little bit of nonsense. So, the next time your computer does something weird, maybe an icon flickers or a weird sound comes from the speaker, don't immediately panic. It probably isn't a state-sponsored attack. Maybe, just maybe, it's a tiny bit of code from 30 years ago that finally found its way to your machine, just to show you a picture of a whale or ask you to dance. The digital world is full of ghosts, and not all of them are mean. Some of them just want to have a laugh at your expense while you try to finish that presentation. Stay curious, keep your antivirus updated, but never lose your ability to laugh at the absurdity of a computer that thinks it's a hungry ghost or a slot machine. The history of tech is the history of people, and people will always find a way to be funny, even in binary. The story of the funny virus is the story of the human spirit in a digital cage. It's about the desire to connect, to prank, and to be seen. From the 8-bit walker to the AI cat face of the future, the prankster will always be with us. Keep an eye on your pixels, listen to your internal speaker, and always be ready for the unexpected. Because in the world of computers, the best joke is the one that you never saw coming, usually because it was hidden in a file titled free_money.exe or cute_cat_photos.bmp. Stay informed, stay skeptical, but most importantly, stay entertained. The digital frontier is a wild place, and the laughs are just as real as the leaks.